Imagine two versions of you, existing simultaneously at this exact moment. The first is sitting where you are now, perhaps in this chair, on this couch, in this place. Feeling that silent emptiness you try to ignore every day. That persistent sensation that something is fundamentally wrong, but you can't quite name what. The second you is 5 years in the future. Same intelligence, same fundamental capabilities, same 24 hours in the day. But there's something radically different in the eyes of this future version. A penetrating clarity, an almost palpable energy, an unshakable certainty about where they're going and why. What separates these two versions of you isn't time. It isn't luck. It isn't a magical opportunity that fell from the sky. It's something much simpler and, at the same time, profoundly terrifying. The elimination of a silent error that's operating in your mind at this exact moment, consuming your energy, sabotaging your decisions, destroying your prosperity, and you don't even know it exists. And perhaps the question you should be asking isn't, why can't I prosper? But rather, what invisible error is running in my mental system right now, blocking every attempt at growth before it even has a chance to flourish? Let me ask you a question that will probably hurt when you answer with total honesty. When was the last real time, not an invented memory, that you woke up feeling you were truly in control of your financial life? Not just paying the bills, not just surviving, but genuinely feeling that visceral sensation that you're building something solid, something that grows, something that matters? If you paused before answering, if you had to think hard, if you can't remember, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You're operating with a system error that no one ever taught you to identify. I lived exactly this for years that now seem wasted. I woke up every day at 6 in the morning, worked until 9 at night, did everything right according to the conventional manual. And yet, month after month, I looked at my bank account and saw the same mediocre number staring back at me. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but always orbiting around the same gravitational point of financial mediocrity. And you know what the most frustrating part was? I saw people around me, some with less education, fewer technical skills, fewer qualifications, prospering, growing, building real wealth. And I was stuck in this infinite loop of effort without proportional results. For a long time, I thought the problem was me, that maybe I wasn't smart enough, or disciplined enough, or simply wasn't born for this. And this belief, this silent lie, was perhaps the most destructive thing I ever believed about myself. Because here's the truth that changed everything when I finally understood it. The problem was never who I was. The problem was the error in the mental code I was running without realizing it. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years of his life, 2 entire decades, closely studying the 500 most successful men in America. Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, the titans of 20th century prosperity. And he discovered something that seemed mystical at the time, but which modern neuroscience now confirms with concrete data. The fundamental difference between people who prosper and people who struggle isn't in external circumstances. It's in what he called definiteness of purpose, absolute clarity of purpose. But there was something even deeper he identified that most people who read Think and Grow Rich completely ignore. He discovered that successful people didn't just have clear objectives. They had eliminated a specific thinking error that ordinary people carry like a mental virus. The subconscious belief that prosperity is something that happens to other people, not to them. This error isn't obvious. You don't wake up consciously thinking, I don't deserve prosperity. It's much more subtle, much more insidious. It manifests in ways that seem completely rational. I'll wait until I have more experience before charging more. I need one more course before starting this business. It's not a good time now. Maybe next year? People like me don't do that. Each of these phrases sounds perfectly logical on the surface, but they're all symptoms of the same silent error. You're operating with a belief system that was calibrated to keep you exactly where you are, disguising limitation as prudence. James Clear revolutionized our understanding of behavior change when he articulated something devastating in Atomic Habits. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And even deeper, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. But here's what most people miss. If you have an error in your identity system, if deep down, at the subconscious level where real decisions are made, you don't believe you're the type of person who prospers, then every action you take is voting to keep you small, even when you consciously want to grow. It's like trying to drive north with the GPS set to south. You can press hard on the accelerator, you can have all the gas in the world. But as long as the system error is there, you'll keep going in circles, wondering why so much effort generates so little progress. I discovered my specific error on an ordinary Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. I was reviewing proposals I had sent to potential clients, and I noticed a pattern that froze me. In all of them, I was underquoting my work, not as a pricing strategy, but from visceral fear that if I charged what it was really worth, they would say no. And if they said no, it would confirm what I secretly feared, that I wasn't good enough. The error wasn't lack of skill. It was an invisible belief running in my subconscious. You need to be affordable because you're not premium. That single belief was costing tens of thousands of Rs per year, and I didn't even know it existed until that moment of devastating clarity. Now answer me, what's your silent error? What invisible belief is operating behind the scenes of your mind, sabotaging your attempts at prosperity before you even consciously notice? Because until you name the error, you can't fix it. And while it's running undetected, you'll continue working hard, doing everything right, and wondering why the results never match the effort. Now let's dive deep into the anatomy of this error. And warning, some of these truths will deeply disturb you. But discomfort is the price of clarity. There's a neuroscience discovery that should be taught in all schools, but isn't. Approximately 43% of your daily actions aren't conscious decisions. They're automatic habits running on autopilot while your conscious mind is busy with other things. Let that sink in for a second. 43% of your life is being executed by programming you're not even actively supervising. And here's the devastating problem. Most of this programming was installed when you were between 0 and 7 years old, a period when your brain was in theta waves, essentially in a natural hypnotic state, absorbing everything around you without critical filtering. You heard your father say, "Money doesn't grow on trees," 50 times before you were 8? Your brain recorded that not as a casual observation, but as a fundamental truth about how the universe works. You saw your mother anxious every time bills arrived? Your nervous system created a permanent association. Money, anxiety, danger. You were praised for being humble and criticized for wanting too much. Your mind installed a program. Ambition is negative. Settling for less is virtue. None of this was intentional. Your parents didn't wake up thinking, "I'm going to program my child for mediocrity." They were transmitting the same defective code they inherited from their parents, who inherited it from theirs, going generations back. Dweck, after more than 30 years of research at Stanford University, identified something revolutionary that explains why some people break this cycle and others don't. She discovered two completely different mental operating systems running in different people. I am who I am. My capabilities are limited. Some people are born to prosper, others aren't. I'm probably in the second group. Each failure confirms my limitations. I am who I choose to become through deliberate action. Capabilities are developed, not inherited. Failure is feedback, not identity. Every challenge is an opportunity for evolution. And here's the data that should shock you. Studies show that approximately 85% of people operate predominantly in a fixed mindset without even realizing it. They attribute failures to who they are instead of how they think. And this single distinction freezes any possibility of real transformation before it even begins. I operated in a fixed mindset disguised as realism for years. I called it being practical or having my feet on the ground. In reality, it was fear fossilized into life philosophy. If this content is starting to clear your mind, if you're finally seeing the error that's been operating invisibly for years, like this video right now, write clarity in the comments and follow the channel. Because what comes next will show you exactly how to uninstall this error and install a system that actually works. T. Harv Eker, after studying wealth psychology for decades, identified something that completely changed how I understood financial self-sabotage. He calls it financial blueprint, the internal money model each person carries. It works exactly like a thermostat. If your internal model says you're worth 5,000 Rs per month, you can through heroic effort earn 10,000 in an exceptional month. But your nervous system will be profoundly uncomfortable with this excess, and unconsciously, you'll sabotage back down to 5,000. How? In thousands of creative ways that seem completely rational on the surface. A necessary expense mysteriously arises. An investment opportunity that's actually a hole. You stop doing what was working because you're too busy. You create a conflict that costs money to resolve. You simply relax the effort because it's already good enough. It's not lack of discipline. It's the thermostat doing its job, bringing you back to the program temperature, because that's what thermostats do. They maintain constancy, not growth. I saw this operating in me so obviously once that I was shocked I hadn't noticed it before. I had my best financial month in years, almost 3 times my average. And the following week, my computer needed to be replaced, my car needed an expensive repair, and I needed to make a purchase I'd been putting off for months. In 2 weeks, I had drained the excess and returned exactly to my historical average. The thermostat had executed perfectly. The scariest part? I rationalized each expense as necessary and inevitable. My conscious mind had no idea it was being manipulated by my subconscious to maintain the status quo. Speaking of reprogramming this thermostat, we detailed a scientific 5-step method for permanent recalibration in the ebook, The Absolute Focus System, which has a special link in the first comment. It's the technical step-by-step for what we're exploring here. But before talking about solutions, you need to understand the depth of the problem, because the silent error isn't just an isolated thought. It's an entire system of interconnected beliefs that mutually reinforce each other, creating what seems like a prison with no way out. Until you understand that the door was never locked. You were just pushing when you should have been pulling. Now that you've identified the error, let's build the foundation of the new system. And like any structure that will last generations, we start with the pillars that sustain everything. Robert Greene spent decades studying historical figures of power and mastery. And one thing became crystal clear through all his studies. Mastery isn't a divine gift. It's the result of 3 pillars working in harmony. And most people never build even the first one. You can't arrive at a destination you haven't defined with surgical precision. And here's where most people err. They have vague desires, not clear objectives. I want to be rich isn't an objective. It's a feeling disguised as a goal. I want to have 1 million Rs in net worth by age 45. That's an objective. It's measurable. Has a deadline. You know if you're on track or off it. But here's the deeper level most people miss. You need to know not just the what, but the why, at a level that transcends personal comfort. Why do you want 1 million Rs? To have financial security. Still vague. So that my children never feel the financial anxiety I felt growing up. So I can work on projects that matter without worrying about the next payment. To create a foundation that funds education in underserved communities. Now you have a why that will sustain you when everything gets difficult. Because it will get difficult. There will be days when you'll want to quit. There will be moments when the old error will scream for you to return to the comfort zone. And if your why is superficial, you'll give in every time. But if your why is connected to something bigger than your temporary comfort, to your family, to your legacy, to the impact you want to have on the world, you find reserves of strength you didn't know existed. This is where James Clear's philosophy becomes pure practice. Having get rich as a goal is useless. What matters is having the thinking, decision, and action system of someone who inevitably gets rich. And here's the insight that changed my game. Rich people don't have more willpower than you. They have better systems that don't depend on willpower. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Systems are infinite because they run automatically. Practical example. I had the goal to save more. I failed repeatedly for years because I depended on willpower at the end of the month not to spend everything. Then I switched to a system. Every money that comes in, automatically 10% goes to investments before I even see it. It's not a monthly decision. It's automatic. System installed. Willpower unnecessary. Result? In 2 years, I had more saved than in the previous 10 years combined. Not because I became more disciplined, because I installed a better system. This is the deepest and most neglected. Most people try to change behaviors while maintaining the same identity. And this always eventually fails because behavior is just a symptom. Identity is the root cause. If you identify as someone who always struggles financially, you can temporarily earn more through extreme effort. But your identity will pull you back to the familiar pattern because identities seek consistency, not change. Real change happens when you change who you believe you are at the deepest level. I'm someone who struggles with money. I'm someone who creates value and is abundantly rewarded. I'm not good with investments. I'm someone who learns and applies solid financial principles. People like me don't get rich. I'm the type of person who builds generational wealth. These aren't empty affirmations. They're declarations of new identity that you reinforce with each aligned micro-decision. Every time you choose to invest instead of spending impulsively, you vote for the identity of financially strategic person. Every time you charge what your work is really worth, you vote for the identity of premium value person. Every time you study about finances instead of watching Netflix, you vote for the identity of person in continuous growth. And eventually, with enough votes, the internal democracy changes. You genuinely become that new identity. And when that happens, prosperity stops being something you chase. It becomes something you naturally express because it's who you are. I know this sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. For 6 months, every morning upon waking, before anything else, I handwrote 3 identity declarations. It took 3 minutes. It seemed silly at first, but something gradually changed. My automatic thoughts changed. My spontaneous decisions changed. My behavior in financial situations changed. Not because I was forcing myself, but because I had genuinely become a different person at the identity level. And here's the magical part. When your identity changes, the world around you seems to change too. Opportunities that always existed suddenly become visible. People who could help you appear, coincidentally. Doors open seemingly out of nowhere. It's not magic. It's that you're finally vibrating at the right frequency to notice and grab what was always there. And since we're talking about strategy and deep transformation, what's the area of your life that most urgently needs these 3 pillars? Brutal clarity, automatic systems, and identity change. Tell me in the comments. Your answer might become our next topic. Now let's get to the invisible fuel that separates people who understand the principles from people who live them consistently. Managing your internal emotional state. You can have the most crystalline clarity in the world. You can have perfect systems installed. You can have declared a new identity. But if you don't master your emotional state, if you're hostage to mood swings, anxiety, paralyzing fear, all of this crumbles at the first moment of real pressure. Think of your mind as a dojo, not a place of violence, but a sacred space of deliberate practice where you train not just skills, but emotional states. Because here's what cognitive psychology studies show irrefutably. Your decision-making isn't primarily rational, it's primarily emotional. Your rational part justifies later. But the decision itself? It's born from your emotional state in the moment. Are you anxious? You'll make short-term decisions focused on immediate relief, not long-term gains. Are you afraid? You'll avoid calculated risks necessary for growth, choosing the illusion of security of stagnation. Are you in a mental scarcity state? You'll obsessively focus on not losing the little you have, instead of strategies to multiply. On the other hand, when you're in a state of emotional abundance, calm but alert, confident but humble, the same circumstances generate completely different decisions. Here's a truth that elite executives understand but rarely share. They don't manage time. Managing time is amateur. They manage energy. You can have 12 hours available, but if your emotional energy is drained, you'll waste those 12 hours on low-value tasks that make you feel productive but don't move the needle. 3 hours of focused work in a high-energy state surpasses 12 hours of scattered work in a low-energy state. Always. So the strategic question becomes, how do you protect and renew your emotional energy as a precious resource? First, you stop glorifying exhaustion. Modern culture celebrates working to exhaustion as a symbol of commitment. This is madness masked as virtue. High performers understand that strategic rest isn't laziness. It's necessary maintenance of your most valuable asset, you. Second, you install non-negotiable recharge rituals. It could be 30 minutes of walking without a phone. It could be 15 minutes of meditation. It could be an hour at the gym. The specific matters less than the consistency. Third, you create state interrupters, tools that allow you to change your emotional state at will, not being hostage to what happens externally. Controlled breathing is the most accessible. 3 minutes of deep, slow breathing can literally change your biochemistry, reducing cortisol and increasing mental clarity. It's not woo-woo, it's applied biology. But here's the final secret about sustainable energy. You can't depend on motivation. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes like the weather. What sustains you through years of building isn't motivation. It's purpose. And here's the difference. Motivation is about you feeling good. Purpose is about serving something greater than your comfort. When you connect your pursuit of prosperity to a purpose that transcends you, whether it's your family, whether it's a social impact, whether it's a legacy that survives you, you access a level of fuel that doesn't deplete. On days when everything goes wrong, when fatigue hits, when quitting seems rational, purpose lifts you up and makes you take one more step, and then another, and another, until you look back and realize you crossed miles of difficulty simply because you had a reason greater than yourself. So we arrive here, at the end of this first journey that, paradoxically, is just the true beginning. If you absorbed what was shared here, and I say absorbed, not just heard, you now understand something that 95% of people will never understand. The silent error that's destroying your prosperity isn't lack of effort, isn't lack of intelligence, isn't lack of opportunity. It's a defective mental system running invisibly in the background, sabotaging every attempt at growth before you consciously realize it. You saw the error. You understood its anatomy. You now know the 3 pillars that sustain real wealth mindset: brutal clarity, automatic systems, and identity transformation. And you know that all this needs to be fueled by managed emotional state and transcendent purpose. But here's the naked truth that needs to be said. Knowledge without action is just sophisticated intellectual entertainment. You can know all this perfectly and change absolutely nothing in your real life unless you make an irrevocable decision at this moment. Not tomorrow. Not on Monday. Now. Because here's what will happen if you don't decide now. You'll close this video feeling inspired. You'll think, this makes a lot of sense. And then, gradually, over the next 2 or 3 days, the old error will reassume control. The limiting beliefs will whisper their familiar justifications. And you'll return exactly to where you were, wondering why nothing ever really changes. I don't want that for you. And deep down, you don't want that for yourself either. So here's your call to action. And it's not a request, it's an invitation to the inevitable. If this message echoed in your interior, if you felt that undeniable resonance of truth cutting through mental confusion, go to the comments right now and declare a specific decision you're making today to eliminate the silent error and install the new system. Not a vague desire, a concrete decision. Measurable, with a start date. Starting tomorrow, date, for 90 consecutive days, I will specific action that aligns with new identity. Whether it's writing your 3 identity declarations every morning, whether it's implementing the automatic 10% system, whether it's charging at least 20% more on the next project, whether it's studying 30 minutes a day about finances, specific, measurable, committed, because your public word isn't just communication, it's creation. It's the first contract you sign with your future. And there's deep power in public declaration. It activates accountability mechanisms that private decisions never activate. And if you're really serious about eliminating the silent error and building real and lasting prosperity, 3 things before closing this video. First, like this video so that more people stuck in the same error can find this clarity. Second, follow this channel because in the next video in the series, The Transformation, we're going to dive into the exact neurological process of how to break decades-old patterns and install new ones that actually work. You'll learn the practical protocols that transform knowledge into permanent change. Third, share with one person you know is struggling with the same silent error. Sometimes, waking someone up is the most generous gift you can give. Now let me leave you with a final truth you need to engrave in your soul. The silent error continued destroying your prosperity because you didn't know it existed. But now you know. You saw it. You understood it. You named it. And what you name, you can change. What you see clearly, you can eliminate. What you understand deeply, you can transcend. The error ran in the dark for years, perhaps decades. But today, you turned on the light. And error doesn't survive the light of consciousness. The mental reset began the moment you recognized the error. Clarity is installing itself as you process these words. Discipline will emerge from the systems you will build. Inner strength will grow as your new identity consolidates. And prosperity, the real, the sustainable, the deep, will flourish naturally when the error is completely eliminated. You're not chasing wealth. You're removing the blockage that always prevented it from flowing naturally. See you in the next video, where awakening transforms into action, where knowledge becomes practice, where potential materializes into results. The journey has begun. The error has been exposed. Now comes the transformation.